In this video, I'm going to take you on the journey with me as I build my dream workshop.
This is my garage, but for the last couple of years, it's actually been my workshop. And now the time has come that I've finally committed to turning it into my permanent workshop, and I'm going to be doing a complete makeover in this space. I am so excited for this. Honestly, it's one of my favorite makeovers that I have been waiting a long time to do. I'm going to be painting the concrete floor, painting the walls, and then adding a whole lot of cabinetry in from Bunnings and the Pinnacle brand. And I can't wait to show you how amazing this space turns out. It's a dream to be able to create your dream workspace when you're working in this space and you're doing a lot of DIY projects. And I'm so excited to be able to finally make it happen.
This is my garage. Currently, it's pretty empty, echoey, and has the odd cobweb. When we built this house, I didn't have any idea that renovating and upcycling was going to become my full-time job, and so I didn't plan a space for it. But as my business grew, so did the amount of time I spent out here. And I'm a little bit sad to see this concrete floor go because there are so many memories of previous projects on there. And I think deep down inside, my husband's probably a little bit sad that I'm now turning this into my permanent workshop because he was kind of hoping that one day he would get his garage back. But between you and me, he's definitely not going to be that lucky. I want to create a space that screams power tools live here and that has that real workshop feel to it. But it also has to be like chic, you know? Because it couldn't really be my dream workshop if it wasn't also stylish. Now I have a vision and we're going to be working towards that vision, and the first step is paint. I went bold. I wanted dramatic, moody black walls, the kind of backdrop that makes every tool pop, because black just hits differently in a workshop. Even if you don't like black inside your house, I think everybody would really like a black workshop at the end of the day. So now I'm just going to let you enjoy watching me paint the walls in this workshop all black. So now that the painting's all done, it's time for the next step. I've painted 2 coats of this black. Well, actually it's a color called Monument. It's a color bond color that a lot of people use on their roofs and their guttering and those sorts of things, but it's also a color that I love to use on internal walls because it's not quite as harsh as black, but it does give that really dark, moody vibe. I grabbed out the pressure washer and hosed off all of the garage floor, and then got my bucket and mixed up my concrete cleaner, and then had to use that to scrub down all of the floor and make sure there was no residue on it before I could apply the paint. It was really a pretty easy process, but a hot tip here would be to wear more solid heavy duty shoes than I did because I got my feet absolutely satched. I then pressure washed again to make sure I removed all of the soap and all of the chemicals that I just used to clean the floor, and then I used a squidgy to squish it all off and try and let that concrete floor dry. I then did have to leave it overnight to let it completely dry before I could do the next step. It's time to paint the garage floor, but I made a bit of a whoopsie when I was at the shop buying the garage floor paint. You see, I bought 2 components to this, the base and then the tint. And it probably should have clicked to me that tint meant not a solid color, because I mean, I do this all the time. But it didn't. That was until I started painting it on the floor, and then at this point I was thinking, why does it look more like grey water than it does like paint? And instantly I was starting to feel the regret of my whoopsie. But I was too far in at this point, so I thought, oh well, I may as well just keep going and apply 1 coat of this, and then we'll work out what we can do to put another coat on that's going to be a little bit darker and actually cover all of these old paint stains on the floor. finished off the first coat and then did a little bit of brainstorming and decided that I thought that if it was a tint, all I needed to do is add some more of the actual tint color to be able to make it darker, and hopefully that will then make it not so see-through. So I went back to the store and bought 2 more tins of the tint to mix in with the base, and I mixed it all together, and now you'll be able to see that it was considerably darker and it actually did cover entirely all of those paint marks that were on the floor originally. In fact, after adding the extra tint in, it actually turned out really well. This color was pretty much perfect to what I had in my mind. Note to self, next time you need to paint a concrete floor, skip the whisper of color energy and go straight for the solid color and steer clear of the tint. But you would never know, because look how amazing it looks now. Now that the blank canvas and the shell is all ready to go, it's time for the next phase, adding all of the storage and cabinetry. Or, as I like to call it, how many flat packs can one woman carry before needing to call in backup? I'm using all Pinnacle hardware for the garage cabinetry, and I've got to say they were totally the MVPs of this whole makeover. Unboxing all of his cabinetry was so satisfying. Honestly, it was like I was a kid at Christmas again. I pulled out all of the bits and pieces before, of course, checking the instructions and then starting to put them all together. Thankfully, most of them were pre-built and they really didn't require a huge amount of assembly, just adding all the little bits and pieces. I had to screw all of the drawers together and add in all of the drawer liners before placing the workbench on top. I then installed the supports and the pegboard that goes in between the workbench and the overhead cabinetry, and finally I installed the overhead cabinetry up the top. But when installing the overhead cabinets, that's when I needed to call in reinforcements, because I needed to get my husband to hold it in place while attaching it to the supports. So as I finished assembling each one, and now that he was already helping, I just got him to help me move them all into position in the garage. Now, I did plan out this entire space on the Pinnacle Hardware website using the measurements of all of these components to make sure that they were all going to fit nicely between the walls and the doors and any other obstacles that I had in the way, like the solar box that I have on the opposite wall. So if you are going to be doing a project like this, just make sure that you take into account any obstacles that you have in the way, because it'd be a real pain if you then purchased a whole lot of cabinetry and then realized that they weren't actually going to fit in the space that you had designed them for, because you have something stopping them from being installed. Now, I had two-door cupboards that I also needed to build, and these ones were complete flat packs. They weren't pre-assembled at all, so I just had to spend a little bit of time putting these all together. But lucky me, I actually really like assembling flat packs. There's something oddly satisfying about it. On this side of my workshop, because of the solar system up the top there, I opted for 2 long rolly workbenches. So I just rolled those into position and then locked the wheels so they weren't going to go anywhere. And for a little bit of extra storage, I moved my kids' bag storage out here so that they can hang their school bags on the way in from school. Then came another deeply satisfying part, organizing. I put all the drawer liners in, all the storage tubs, and then I added all of the screws, nails, paintbrushes, rollers. They were all separated, labeled, and finally out of random little boxes. And I'm just going to let you sit here and watch this oddly satisfying process. My paints even got their own dedicated paint cupboard. And then the pegboard wall. Oh yes, let's talk about the pegboard wall. I displayed all of my tools like collectibles, perfectly spaced, arranged by size, type, some even may say obsessively so, but I just say a bit artistic. Now it feels less like a garage and more like a DIY museum, which hopefully will help me keep things a little bit neater. Because here's the thing, I love a good DIY project, but while I'm in the middle of the project, I just leave a bit of a trail of a mess behind me. But now, with every tool and screw having its own place, I might actually put things back where they belong. I'm growing, I'm evolving, and now I get to be, well, mildly organised. Now let's take a slow-mo look at how good it is looking. Seriously, it is so schmick.
Here we are in the completed garage workshop. I absolutely love how it turned out. It's even better than what I was expecting. I hope you like how it turned out too, but I might be a little bit biased. On this side of the room, I've got my long workbenches. So they're going to be where I cut down my timber to size. I've got the drop saw on the end and I can run the timber along the bench and then cut them down to size for whatever project I'm working on. I've added in a TV because I love to have a little background noise when I'm working, but also means that I can flick onto YouTube and quickly watch tutorials. On this side of the room, I've got all of my tools. So I put the most regularly used tools next to the door because I do often go inside and out when I'm working on projects. I've got my tape measures and my Stanley knives here, silicone guns because I'm always using no more gaps and silicone and filler and those sorts of things. Safety gear because it's super important that I always have on my safety glasses, my earmuffs and a mask if I am sanding. And then I've got the rest of the bulk of my tools. Some of my tools were too big that I couldn't hang them, like my circular saw and those sorts of tools. So they're just easily accessed in this cupboard here. And then all of the little things are all in these drawers. So the drawers are all organized really well. I've got all my nails, bolts, screws, everything all segmented here. The Pinnacle hardware have amazing storage solutions that you can pick and choose from when you're organizing everything. So you can pick from certain different sizes in all of those organizers. You can got little squares, mid-size squares, and then big squares for each of the drawers. On this side of the room in the drawers, I've got all of my painting gear. So I'll show you up close the painting gear, but I've got all of the paintbrushes, roller heads, masking tape, sponges, all of that sort of stuff on this side. And then I've got all of the details and decorations that I use for furniture down in the drawer below. The big cabinets are full of supplies. So on this side, we've got all of my paints. So this is purely dedicated to paints, this cabinet, and the paints are all in there, easily accessible for me, ready to go. And then on this side, I've got a whole lot of other bits and bobs. So we've got all of my tiling tools, all of my cleaning products. I've also got some of my other big tools like my vacuum and whatnot in this cupboard as well.
But I've got one last thing that I want to do to finish this space off, and that is to make a custom workshop sign.
So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this panel as the back panel for the board. I'm then going to add some curved edge Tasmanian oak that I'm going to glue on top, and then I'm going to be using some wooden letters to spell out refinish with jade and then framing the whole thing. So I've got the panel here and the panel is 1200 wide. I'm going to leave the panel at 1200 wide. I just need to cut the depth of it depending on how many panels I'm going to add with the Tasmanian oak. But I also just want to make sure that I'm going to be able to space out width-wise the refinish with jade sign. So I've purchased all of these letters. Only when I purchased the letters, there was no I's. So I had to purchase some L's, which I'm then just going to cut off the extra little bit with my multi-tool. But we're going to space it out and make sure it's going to fit. They're going to have to be like right next to each other. These are going to be smaller once I've cut the edges off for the eye. In fact, I might even just do them now. So I've got these three that I need to cut the edge off. I'm going to use that end of the board, so I'm just going to cut them there because I'm going to use this side of the board because that side of the board's got some broken bits on the edges. I'll just chuck some safety glasses on. So I'll just stand on it and hold it with my foot and just ever so slightly cut that little bit of the edge off. So we have an eye. So I've just worked out the measurements of where I need to cut. I've spaced out the name and then I've worked out approximately the same amount of gap on each side. I will, when I actually stick these down, make sure that I've got the exact spacing on each side of this. But for now I am, just a bloody March fly coming after me. For now I am going to just cut this down to size, and then once I've got it cut down to size, I'll space it out. I needed to make sure I allow enough room on each side for the edge strip. So I'm going to be putting an edge strip frame around the outside, which I'm going to cut on the 45-degree angle so that I have that exactly going to be square around the outside of the board. And then once I've got the frame on, I'm going to cut these down to size and they're going to sit on the inside of this frame. So there's going to be these panels on the front and then these names or the letters are going to sit on top of that. So the letters will stick out a little bit further than the frame and they'll kind of be like a 3D image or kind of stick out like a 3D picture.
Now I'm ready to get all the measurements done and then start cutting the backboard for this sign.
So I'm needing to cut along this line here. So what I need to do is I'm going to have my guide rail on this side and then I need to make sure I've got enough space underneath where my workbench is that I'm going to be able to just cut that panel off. So what I want to do is move this out far enough that I've got plenty of clearance on my workbench where I'm going to be cutting. And then I'm going to clamp the panel to the workbench first so that it's not going to move. So I'm going to take 2 clamps and clamp it to the workbench. I'm then going to get my guide rail, which is going to be set up on this side because I'm going to be cutting on that line. And I need to get my circular saw. So I'm going to set my circular saw up to allow enough distance to cut on my straight line. And then I'm going to clamp the guide rail onto the panel. Now because I can't sit the circular saw on the other end, I use my ruler to measure and I just make sure I'm the same distance. So it's usually 39 or 39 millimeter or 3.9 centimeters. So I need to bring the guide rail in on this side to make sure it's the same. And then I'm going to clamp that down. So now I've got my guide rail in place, I've got my line, my circular saw can just run along there and cut that. But the only difference is once I've cut that, I need to make sure that I hang on to this panel so it doesn't just drop off once I'm done. Because I'm also just doing one cut, I'm not going to be attaching any vacuum systems to the circular saw. I'm just going to have the dust fly. So I'm going to put on a dust mask. Great, so now I've done the long cut for my back panel and that board's ready. I've now just got the shortcut to do. Now I've got 2 options with the shortcut. I can use my drop saw because my drop saw has an extension arm that I can use to come along and cut that length. Or I can set my circular saw up and do it again with my circular saw. Okay, so I've got my laser set up, I've got my circular saw. I'm just going to cut from here and move this way and then I'm going to spin it around or flip it over and do the same again. So I've cut that as far as I can there and now I'm just going to flip it over so that I've got the other component, making sure that I've got my blade exactly where that blade just was and then I'm going to cut again. And then I have my board cut down to the right size.
I cut all of the 45-degree angles for the picture frame molding that's going around the edge of the sign, and then I've spray painted black all of these letters. I cut down to size all of the curved pieces of Tasmanian oak and then glued them all into place in the middle of the picture frame molding. I then just gave it a quick wipe down before I painted on a clear polyurethane top coat because I'm just going to be leaving this as the natural timber look. I measured and got them all into the right position, and then once I was happy with the placement of all of the letters on the sign, I then just used super glue to glue them all into place. All of the products that I've used to the makeover of my space, and then all of the products that I selected from Pinnacle for all of the cabinetry, along with all of the things that I used to build my custom sign, are all linked down in the video description for you.
Now you're probably wondering why I have chairs in the middle of my garage workshop. There's a couple of reasons why I've done this. The first one is just because it looks good, and even though we're in a workshop, I still love to have a stylish space. The second is because then I can sit down and take a break in the middle of my projects. And the third is so I can sit down and film talking clips that I can put in my YouTube videos. The goal of my YouTube channel is to help you and inspire you and teach you that it is possible to create your dream home. Whether that be on a budget, whether it be having a go at doing it yourself, or whether maybe it's just giving you some inspiration that you can then go and hire someone else to do it for you. And now that I have this amazing workshop space, it's going to be so much easier to grab out the tools and get stuck into the next project. So I'll see you in the next video.
I hope you've enjoyed watching me create my dream workshop and coming on this journey with me. Make sure you hit subscribe to the channel Refinish with Jade so that we can do so many more fun projects together.